This was the song that played on Dylan's little musical snow globe. It was a dark Christmas Eve. Dylan and his twin brother Cole were the only ones at home. Their parents went to the neighbor's house for the annual Christmas party and left them to fend for themselves. It was the first time. The twins insisted that they were old enough to stay home alone for a few hours, and that they didn't need to hire a babysitter on Christmas Eve. So there they were, tucked into their parents' bed, waiting for Santa to arrive. Well, Cole had already fallen asleep. Dylan kept himself occupied by rewinding the snow globe and replaying his favorite Christmas carol over and over again, and staring at the reindeer figurine, courtesy of their grandfather. The musical snow globe was an early Christmas present from his grandpa. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was the only song it played, but he loved it with all his heart. How could he not? After all, it was the last gift he received from his grandpa. The old man passed away earlier that month. He had cancer. Poor Dylan was heartbroken, but his tiny mind held on to the last words his grandpa said to him on his deathbed. "Don't cry, champ. Otherwise, Santa will put you on his naughty list." Dylan turned his tear-stained face away from his brother, who was snoring next to him. He didn't care if Santa put him on his naughty list. He missed his grandpa and needed a good cry. Dylan sobbed quietly to himself when a loud thump disrupted his pity party. Something had landed on their rooftop, then slid down the side of the house. The loud thump woke Cole up. He sprung right up and shook Dylan. "Did you hear that?" Excitement pooled in his eyes, and he scampered to his feet, pulling Dylan out of bed with him. "Come on, it's Santa! He's finally here!" "Cole, wait!" Dylan yelled. Unlike his twin, Dylan did not think the sound came from Santa Claus. Something wasn't quite right. There were no sleigh bells or ho-ho-hos. Frustrated by his brother's reluctance, Cole tugged on him again, but Dylan didn't budge. He remained rooted in his spot and kept shaking his head from side to side. Cole was about to cry. If Dylan didn't hurry up, Santa would leave and he wouldn't get to see him. "Dylan, please, let's go. If we don't, he'll move on to the next house." Refusing to see his brother cry again, Dylan agreed, and they went towards where the noise came from, in the backyard. It wasn't the presents that made Cole want to see Santa. Unlike Dylan, Cole was unable to be in the room when he passed. He felt guilty about it and had written a letter to Santa asking for a chance to say goodbye and see him one last time. That was his Christmas wish. That is why he was so adamant about seeing the jolly old Saint Nick. But he would soon realize that some things are meant to be left alone. Finally, both of them got to the backyard, and that's where the problem started. There was no one there. Cole was scared now and started sweating profusely, even in single-digit temperature. "Dylan, I think we need to leave now," he whispered. "There's no one here." For the first time that night, Dylan agreed with Cole. He suspiciously looked around, and the stark darkness of the place scared him more than he wanted to admit. He nodded and started backing away slowly, but just as they got to the door that led back to the kitchen, they heard another sound. An animal growled from behind the trees. Now, the two of them started shaking. "Who's there?" Dylan called out. There was no answer. Outside, it was deathly silent, and everything stood still. The wind stopped blowing, and the leaves stopped rustling. The only sound that could be heard was the harsh breathing of Cole and Dylan. It remained that way for a while, until suddenly, something popped out of the shadows. Both of them screamed. They wanted their mommy. A few seconds passed, and they finally stopped screaming. Their hearts pounded heavily in their chests. Cole was the first one to recover. He slowly pried his eyes open and stared in shock at what stood in front of him. Dylan couldn't move. He was frozen in place and too terrified to do anything. "Dylan, look!" Dylan had no choice but to look up and be brave. What he saw was not what he expected. There, standing majestically ahead of them, was a brown reindeer, and its face was glowing red. He stood beside Cole. "Whoa!" he exclaimed, starstruck by Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, his favorite Christmas character. Cole mirrored the same reaction on his face. They had only heard about reindeer, but they never saw one in real life until now. Then suddenly, like a magnet, they felt pulled towards it. Maybe Santa did arrive and was going to give them presents. With his energy renewed and hope restored, he tugged on Cole and ran towards the reindeer. He was too excited to see the animal. They came to a complete stop in front of it. They just stood there, staring at it in awe. They reached their small hands out to pet it. It felt like a dream. The friendly beast's fur was so soft and warm. Then Dylan began looking around. Where was Santa? He stopped petting the reindeer and went around it, in search of Santa and his sleigh. He checked the corner where the deer crawled out from, and then the front of the house. But it was far too dark for him to see anything. For some reason, all the Christmas lights had turned off. There was no Santa, no Dasher or Comet or Cupid, just darkness. "Cole! Can you come help me, please? I can't see anything." He looked around some more, but it was useless. It was way too dark for him to see anything. He finally gave up and started walking back when he heard something he shouldn't have. Dylan looked up at their parents' bedroom window. That song was not supposed to be playing. No one was home. It was impossible for someone to wind up the musical snow globe. A scream came from the backyard. "Cole!" Dylan ran back to where he left his brother and the reindeer. He wished he never left him behind, or left the house for that matter. But instead of a reindeer, another creature stood in its place. It had long, pointy antlers, the face of a deer, and the torso and legs of a human. It was now standing on its hind legs, staring at him, now with glowing red eyes instead of its nose. Dylan held his breath and didn't move a limb. It was as if the roles were reversed. He was now frozen in place like a deer in the headlights. And suddenly, the creature charged at him full speed, growling and with its red light beam headed straight at him. The adrenaline rush kicked in and Dylan sprinted towards the door, entered inside and bolted the door shut. When he was finally able to catch his breath, he remembered Cole. Worried for his dear twin brother's life, Dylan looked out the window and saw the creature still standing there, staring and waiting for him. What kind of Christmas gift was this? Was he really that bad to have conjured up the demented version of the lovable reindeer? But thankfully, soon after, he heard their parents' car pull up to the garage. When he looked out the window again, the Deerman had vanished. Their parents entered the kitchen very confused to see Dylan exasperated and unlocking the back door. Before they could utter a word and scold him for being up late, he ran outside to look for the creature. But it was long gone. And Cole? Dead on the snowy ground.